Hello everyone, it's actually been quite a while since I made one of these, and many of you might remember this as one of the first actual series that I did within this channel. But for those who don't remember, this series has a fast-paced review style where I go over a bunch of classic creepypastas and give my thoughts on whether or not they have truly held up or not. Pretty similar to the way I did the analog horror ranking videos, except it's creepypastas this time. Many of these stories aren't great, but sometimes when revisiting them, I find that many of them are still quite enjoyable, if a bit dated. Most of these have a certain overarching theme over what I cover, and for this one, we really are mainly going to be focusing on lost media creepypastas, which there are a ton of. Many of the ones in this category are infamously bad, like some of the worst stories that creepypastas have to offer, but really, were they as bad as people remember them being, or was a lot of the hate that these stories received unjustified? Let's find out and begin with Rap Rat follows one of those VHS games that we used to play, similar to games like Nightmare, where you would have a VHS tape playing that would go along with the board game in front of you. It's something that really was a product of its time, and the story has to play off those weird memories for better or for worse. The titular Rap Rat is one of the VHS board games where upon putting in the VHS tape, the player, in this case a young child, will witness the VHS tape begin to change and distort into something horrifying. The Rap Rat is described as a grotesque, almost demonic figure, being described as a rat that did not even resemble a rat. The ears were far too big. It had a mouth lined with 2 teeth, the inside of which also looked swollen. The most striking part about the thing, though, was its eyes. They were large, glassy, and fish-like. Then Rap Rat begins to scream at the children to wait their turn, before showing the viewers their worst fears over and over again. The mother then quickly turns off the game, hiding it when the writer not thinking about it for years until he and his girlfriend decide to check it out once again. Upon replaying it, they quickly realize that the grotesque images have changed, this time to their newer fears such as a clown spraying blood, a woman in a dark room, and a man forced to pick up hot metal with his hands. The Rap Rat then reappears on screen, this time gesturing at the girlfriend, showing that he is able to see whoever is playing the game. After that, they begin to hear scratching at their front door, which gets more and more violent as the TV goes to static. It then quickly goes to thumping before finally the writer ejects the VHS tape and it stops. He looks outside to check to see what the scratching is, but nothing is there, and when he calls the cops, the neighbors explain that there was a strange figure outside looking at them. Upon trying to toss the tape, it burns his hands, and the writer and his girlfriend have horrific nightmares where upon saying his name, they hear the same scratching outside their door. They then contact an eBay seller who is trying to sell more copies of the game, asking about the company that created it, who replies with, "I don't know about the game, but I know it was created by the same people who created Nightmare. The company is called A Couple of Cowboys. Try them." Upon contacting them, they hear the story about how a factory worker who, upon getting her hand stuck in the machine, cursed the game with Apparat, a demon within the region. However, after hearing about this, the game creators decide to rename the game to Rap Rat as a sick joke to mock that killed worker, which leads to the violent murders of every single person who was involved with the game. And that is Rap Rat, one of the main creepypastas from 2012, and while this story does not hold up whatsoever. This story is extremely of its time, reading like an even goofier campfire story than normal, and the random lore explanations really do not help it. Honestly, while reading it, I think one of the main issues comes from the lore, as without it, it just seems like a creepy VHS tape that unlocks some sort of monster into this dimension. Without that layer of mystery and with the whole demon Apparat stuff, the story just falls apart. The concept on its own is intriguing, a kid's board game VHS tape changing to show your greatest fears, but just like 1999, it suffers from knowing just too much about what's going on here. Compare this to stories like normal porn for normal people, which just gives us the most horrifying visuals and the hint of something more, and this seems extremely lackluster in comparison. I remember, however, that growing up that this story did use to creep me out a little, mainly due to the nature of the VHS tape showing you your greatest fear and the fact that something's toying with them after viewing it. It just sucks that the story has such a lousy ending, keeping it from being much more intriguing and open than it could have possibly been. 6 out of 10. Dead Bart follows our protagonist who searches from some sort of lost episode from the first season of The Simpsons after noticing that the episodes are out of order numbering-wise. Upon getting into contact with Matt Groening and his production company, he learns about an episode with the production code 7G44, also known as Dead Bart. Our narrator then confronts Matt at a fan event where, upon asking about the episode, all color drains from his face and he begins to have a breakdown. He then writes a website address on a napkin and then begs him to never bring it up again, before quickly storming off. Upon beginning the episode, the narrator quickly notices that the episode is poorly animated compared to normal, and that despite that, the first half is fairly normal besides the characters being slightly more angry than usual. The episode follows them on a plane trip where, upon messing around, Bart gets flung out of the plane and dies in a graphic and realistic way. It then cuts to a photorealistic drawing of his dead body before cutting to the family grieving with painfully realistic acting. It then cuts to 1 year later where the family revisits Bart's grave where they once again begin crying. It then zooms out to reveal the tombstones around them, which has every Simpsons guest star's name on them, and all of which have death dates on it, some of which have not even been on the show yet when the episode had aired. However, even stranger, for a lot of the ones who hadn't died yet, their dates were listed on the exact same day. So this story has always been in a strange place for me. While there are parts of it I do enjoy, I think the vast majority of it is poorly written, especially the first half. It also helped to kickstart a lot of the cliches that would quickly begin the demise of the subgenre as a whole, such as the characters crying in hyper-realistic ways, the ultra-realistic quality of the animation near the death scene. You've heard this all before. But what really makes this story stand out isn't all that, but is the twist ending with the death dates. It's a super good idea and a good play on the Simpsons prediction conspiracy theory, and it doesn't over-explain itself in the way that Rap Rap did, instead leaving that as the final line within the story. That twist honestly keeps the story from being one of the least favorites I've covered thus far. Like seriously, this story is genuinely terrible up until that point. What a comeback for the story. But I seriously can't exactly give it a high score due to just how bad the story is up to that point. But the twist keeps it from being lower than it should be, so remember that if you decide to check it out at some point. 5 out of 10. This story follows an intern at Nickelodeon who is allowed to preview some new SpongeBob episodes before they come out. He talks about how the creators will usually put in a funny title, so he didn't bat too much of an eye when the episode's title card read Squidward's suicide. What follows is Squidward practicing for a clarinet recital where he yells at SpongeBob like he normally would, before cutting to Squidward at the concert where everyone watching begins to boo him but has an extra layer of malice behind it. It then cuts to the crowd revealing that they all had hyper-realistic eyes that are all bloodshot. This causes some confusion among the interns as they keep watching, where it then cuts to Squidward at his bed looking depressed as no sound plays in the background. He then begins to cry for a full minute as it slowly zooms in, his sobbing getting louder and louder and more hurt until his cries sound real to the interns within the room. They all notice that every once in a while the screen will violently twitch as the screen would go to Squidward still sobbing as blood begins to run out of his eyes, revealing the same hyper-realistic eyes from before a laughing is heard for about 20 seconds. Before his crying continues, screams begin to get mixed in as he then reaches for a shotgun as a deep voice shouts, "Do it!" as Squidward ends his own life. And then upon going back through the footage, the strange twitches within the footage actually weren't distortion at all, rather it was pictures of horrifically murdered children put on display by some sort of possible serial killer within the area. Okay, before absolutely ripping this story to pieces, I need to take a breather cause wow, this story is absolutely horrible. There is next to no redeeming qualities about what's on display here. From the hyper-realistic eyes and blood to the mangled children, it really doesn't get any more cliche and over the top than this one. Like, wow, I really am shocked this one was as popular as it was, because it's just so corny. Like, there really isn't anything good to talk about here. The writing is terrible and full of grammar and spelling errors, as I had to decipher some parts of it out due to the writing being just so bad. The pacing is all over the place, and it's just a horrible mess. From the dragging out of the sobbing to the concert that really doesn't add anything to the story, it was just all shock value with absolutely no substance whatsoever. It wouldn't be as bad if there was a more interesting story surrounding it, but instead we just get one of the cheesiest stories I've ever read. 1 out of 10. So in conclusion, last episode creepypastas were not very great from the majority that I've read, because these are generally considered some of the best ones, and if this is the best, then wow. Not one of these got over a 6, which just shows the level of quality that we are working with here. But I will say, if you think that there's a good one that I missed, make sure to let me know in the comments down below, and if you haven't already, like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you all next week.